Good morning, everyone, and my warmest welcome to you all here today from SEC. Last time I spoke, I was actually outside in the blazing sunshine, and everyone else is under the gazebos, sheltering from the sun, probably trying to avoid the sunburn. Today, we continue looking into the Gospel of Matthew, and as many of us may know, Matthew's writing style was focusing on Jesus' kingship and how the Old Testament prophecies point us to Jesus being that long-awaited Messiah, directing his gospel to the Jewish community. So I have a question for us all to think about to open up this morning. So please, at home, just discuss amongst yourselves or just have a quiet think to yourself. What are some of the things that people have said to us or may say to us when they find out that we are a Christian or go to church? What do you think? What are some of the things that people may or have said to us when they find out that we are a Christian or go to church? Do any of these sound familiar? Oh, you're a good person then. Ooh, the easy life now. Or perhaps even my personal favourite. All right. With no further interest shown whatsoever. Well, this morning we're looking at chapter 8, verses 14 to 22. And we're going to try and answer this question. What does it mean to follow Jesus? And I have 3 S's to help us focus on this question. And they are service, sacrifice, and supreme. And I've actually got a 4th S, which I'm going to introduce at the very end. So, firstly, if you'd like to look with me at verses 14 to 15 for our first S of service. When Jesus came into Peter's house, he saw Peter's mother-in-law lying in bed with a fever. He touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she got up and began to wait on him. So we can see here one of the many characteristics of Jesus. We're not even told that the reason Jesus went into Peter's mother-in-law's house was to heal her, but he did it anyway. Such compassion shown here. And this illness is not as severe as something like leprosy, but he still did it. This just demonstrating to us that Jesus does care about the smaller issues as well as the bigger issues. But this is not the main point here. What we need to draw our attention to is the response that Peter's mother-in-law gave to Jesus after being healed. And she got up and began to wait on him. There's no hesitation here. There's no going downstairs to get a drink or to sweep up all the mud before we traipse him through the door. No. She got up and began to wait on Jesus. So what do we think it means to wait on Jesus? Well, it simply means to serve. We are given a beautiful example here of what our response should be like after being restored to spiritual and physical health, looking to immediately serve Jesus and his followers. So what is our response today when we receive answer to prayer or being healed? Do we get a big sigh of relief? Do we forget that our prayers have been answered? I know I am definitely guilty of this. 5 hours later, I'll suddenly go, oh, of course, Lord, I'm so sorry. You answered my prayers and I've not given you the praise you deserve. So do we try to respond like Peter's mother-in-law and immediately serve God, giving praise and thanks to him, serving Jesus and each other? So why else should we want to serve Jesus from this passage that we've got here today? Well, if you look with me again at verses 16 to 17, we will notice something else that Jesus demonstrates to us. When evening came, many who were demon-possessed and were brought to him, and he drove out the spirits with a word and healed all the sick. Now, these impure spirits, they were tough. No man could get rid of them. And here we see it takes just a word that Jesus needs to drive them out. Remember back to Genesis, that it was just a word that was needed to create all things in the beginning. Jesus is powerful because he is God. He is King. It took just a word to heal. And it doesn't even say how much rest Jesus got here. But people kept coming to him, all those who needed healing, and Jesus showed compassion. How do we feel? How would we feel if we got no rest time whatsoever? I know I would have double bolted the front door eventually. But this is another reason why we should naturally want to serve Jesus. He does and has done so much for us. So what does it mean to follow Jesus? It's service. It's immediate response, living in thankfulness and recognizing him as Lord. So what else does it mean to follow Jesus? Well, next we have our second S of sacrifice. So look with me again at verses 18 to 20. When Jesus saw the crowd around him, he gave orders to cross to the other side of the lake. Then a teacher of the law came to him and said, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." Jesus replied, "Foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head." What we see here in this passage is Jesus giving instructions on what to do next. And then a teacher of the law comes and makes this statement, "I will follow you wherever you will go." And then this is not meant in the sense that he will simply just walk around behind Jesus and just follow him on the whole area of Israel, but meant as discipleship. A quote from Spurgeon here did make me laugh, but I think it does shed a lot of light for us, which is this. I wonder if this man thought, well now, I am a scribe. If I join that company, I should be a leader. I perceive that they are only fishermen, the bulk of them. And if I come amongst them, I shall be a great little acquisition to this little band. I should be no doubt made the secretary. Perhaps he may have thought there was something to be made out of such a position. Well, there was one who thought so. Perhaps people think following Jesus will be easy. You get baptized. You come out of the water, arms stretched, saying, "Yes, my life is simple." Well, we know it's not quite like that, and it's not easy, as it may first appear. In the following verse, Jesus told the man one of the costs it will be following him. In verse 20, Jesus replied, "Foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head." Jesus wanted him to understand right from the beginning what it will mean to follow him. Jesus rarely spoke plainly, but in parables and analogies, and here he uses wild animals to describe what it will be like. He states that animals like foxes and birds all have homes on earth, but Jesus has no place to rest. Jesus implies that his followers may have no place to call home. No house, no security, or even stability in this world. In this context, this does not mean that Jesus and his followers were penniless, but they were just homeless. The nature of their ministry kept them on the move the whole time. And this is not going to be a smooth or easy ride. And maybe this is how the world can sometimes perceive being a follower of Jesus. God on our side, so that automatically equals easy. Not true. As Jesus is pointing out here to this teacher of the law, remember when Jesus first called his disciples, they immediately gave up everything and followed him. Their home, their job, their way of life, completely transformed. It is interesting to know what Jesus does here. So another question to have some thinking time. When we evangelize to our friends, family, or maybe people we don't know, what do we lead with? What do you think? Again, just have a little chat or have a little think. What do we lead with when we try to evangelize to people? Maybe some of these come to mind. Maybe we open up with the love of God, forgiveness, the cross, or even our own testimony of how we came to Christ. And these are all fantastic things to show people that they really are. But what does Jesus do here to this teacher of the law? He leads with the cost of being a disciple. Now, Jesus does not tell this man he can't be a disciple, but simply told the truth without painting this glamorized picture of what life will be like when he follows him. It's not what it doesn't feel natural, does it? Now, I'm not suggesting a whole new evangelistic technique where we introduce non-Christians to faith, cost. But it is something that's important. Yeah? Like, Jesus saw it as utmost importance to let people know how difficult it would be. Yes, we should still introduce these lovely things about the love of God and forgiveness because they're all true. But cost is also equally important for people to know. Life following Christ is not easy. So what have we had to sacrifice in the past, can we think of, to follow him? Are there things that we're trying to hold on to that we're not giving to God? Next, look with me for our final few verses. For our third S, Jesus is supreme. Another disciple said to him, "Lord, let me first go and bury my father." But Jesus told him, "Follow me, and let the dead bury their own dead." What do we make of these verses? What do we make of this fellow's request? This caused quite a few questions in our group on WhatsApp for the New Testament in a year. Does this request seem reasonable? Only fair that this fellow just wants to simply bury his father before following Jesus? Well, first let's understand some concept of these verses. Where it says to another disciple, this is not meaning one of the 12. He was a disciple, but did not follow Jesus in the way as he should have done, or as the 12 did. This demonstrates to us that the term disciple has a broader meaning in the Gospel of Matthew. Secondly, this man, and importantly to note, this man is not asking for permission to go and dig a grave for his deceased father, but rather to live in his house and care for him until he died. There was no timescale for this. It could have been quite a long time before he would have left home. So what's the problem here? This man did want to follow Jesus, but just not quite yet. He knew that he wanted to, and it'd be really good to. But something was holding him back. He started making excuses, preferring the comfort of home. The easier option, for just a little bit longer. Perhaps his father was wealthy, and he owned a lot of land. Its temptation was to stay was already high. Would it necessarily get easier later, or would just more excuses crop up? So what does Jesus do? He challenges the man with a simple and important statement. Follow me and let the dead bury their own dead. What is Jesus saying is the most important thing to do right now? Follow him. Jesus is supreme. He is the first and most important. And this from Matthew 22:37 makes it clear from the mouth of Jesus. Jesus replied to this question on the greatest commandment. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and all your soul, and all your mind. Jesus pressed the man to follow him now and clearly stated that the principle of family obligations or any other obligation must not be put ahead of following Jesus. Jesus must come first. Again, like we saw earlier, Jesus was simply being honest. This is what it meant to follow him. And he wanted people to know that right from the beginning. Jesus is supreme in our lives. Is there anything in our life today that's holding us back from giving our all to Jesus? any excuses we can think of, or that some things that could be in danger in our lives. I know myself all too well, I can fall into the trap of always being too busy. And I must stop and I must think, what is more important than serving Jesus? So I'd like to finish with another S. What does it mean to follow Jesus? Why would we want to? Because Jesus is our salvation. Within this passage, there's no obvious direct point saying that Jesus is our salvation here, but I think all the way through, the passage is hinting at it. We can see at the start that Jesus healed Peter's mother-in-law with a simple touch of the hand. Then we are told that Jesus healed all those who were demon-possessed and in sickness with just a word. He has come to save us, but not just in terms of our physical well-being. No. Straight after this verse, Matthew then references to us something from the prophet Isaiah, which is, he took up our infirmities and bore our diseases. Now, in the context of Isaiah, this was referring to Jesus paying the price for our sin, giving us the spiritual healing that we so desperately need. So I think Matthew is showing us that Jesus is not only all-powerful and able to heal us from our physical needs, but to be our salvation, attending to our spiritual needs and healing us. We are told about the cost for us in following Jesus, and I think we're also being hinted here about the cost it will be for Jesus too. So let me read that whole passage from Isaiah because it's really important. So he took up our infirmities and bore our diseases, yet we considered him punished by God, stricken by him and afflicted. He was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. For we're all like sheep who have gone astray. Each of us has turned to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. Have we noticed over chapter 8, so from last week, from Andrew's talk and today, who Matthew is telling us, who is salvation for? Well, let me go through now quickly the 4 different types of people that are saved in 4 slightly different ways. In verse 2, we see a Jewish man of leprosy with no social or religious rights, as to touch a man with leprosy who was unclean was just not lawful. Next, in verse 5, we see a suffering man healed from a word spoken miles away. This is from a Gentile officer who comes to Jesus, and it's just a word from, again, just so far away, and at that exact moment, he's healed. Then in verse 13, a woman was healed with no request made at all. And then finally, we have unnamed multitudes who were healed. So Jewish man healed, forbidden touch. A Gentile officer makes a request for somebody else in faith, healed from a word miles away. A woman healed with a tender touch. Then an unnamed multitude healed from all types of diseases in all types of ways. Can you see all these different people healed? Jesus' salvation is for everyone. Everyone who will come to him. I decided to watch a series on Amazon the other day, and it's called All or Nothing. Has anyone heard of this? And I must apologise if you're not a football fan, because we do get a lot of football analogies, but I do have to add one more. This series looks at some of the biggest clubs in the world and what it means to be a part of it. At Manchester City, you see all the hard work and commitment and sacrifices made by the players. Some leaving home and loved ones, travelling thousands of miles away to play in a foreign land. Yet the team was like a family, and who were there for one another, all on the same mission, to win everything. And it was quoted that football's like a religion. If they don't win, it's just failure. And it got me thinking. I just wonder what this series would have been like if it actually documented the greatest team in the world. Who's that? Well, that's Team Jesus. When you join the team, you cannot lose. It's an unstoppable team. On the team, you cannot fail because Jesus will not fail you. A team of believers who are supporting each other, being part of the family of God. Yeah, it's going to be tough. Sacrifices will be made, but in serving our manager will bring endless joy and our bonus S of salvation. Hopefully, from our passage today, we have seen what it means to follow Jesus, highlighting 4 S's of service, sacrifice, supreme, and salvation. He loves us and he cares for us all, and we can come to him in prayer. He will listen to us and be with us. We saw from this passage that we should want to serve him and his flock, but sacrifices will have to be made as well. But we do it because Jesus is supreme. Jesus is our salvation, and we need let nothing delay us in serving him. So let's pray. We just say, Lord, thank you so much that you are our salvation. Please help us to serve you wholeheartedly. May we come to you in thankfulness. May we come to you and ask for your forgiveness. Lord, you have done so much for us, and you are still doing so much for us today. So, Lord, we just thank you for your word. We thank you for your amazing grace. We thank you that you came to earth to save us. Amen.